So last week I did a video out on the water on the Potomac River. That was a lot of fun. Today I said, you know what, I want to do something like that again. I want to have some fun. I want to get out of the house, which God knows I need to do because I spend so much time either driving in my van or at my desk in my house. So I said, let's go somewhere different. Today we are at the Dahlgren Heritage Railroad Trail. This is a trail that goes from Dahlgren Naval Air Station in King George, Virginia to Fredericksburg. If you know anything about Civil War history, you've heard of Fredericksburg, Virginia. So obviously this is not an active railroad. This has been abandoned for probably 100 years. I don't even know. But it's a really cool trail. I used to actually walk it and run it all the time for exercise, but not so much anymore. I'm just sitting here talking to you and I'm out of breath. This is embarrassing. Stick to the tree. Stick on the tree. Come on. So I brought you out here on this cool December day to talk about something that I saw last week, and that was on the King and Queen Cichlids live stream last Sunday. Scott said something on that stream that really resonated with me, and I wanted to expand on that a little bit. So let's take a look at that clip of their live stream, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
What is the biggest obstacle with keeping three arowana?
Well, we only have two.
We have only had two, so I don't know about keeping three. I definitely wouldn't do it. We have two large arowanas, a pike cichlid, and our sturgeon in there. They're all doing great. Arowanas float and swim on top. Sturgeon stays on the bottom, and the pike is kind of a mid swimmer. The only obstacles I have is that these guys, when it comes time to feed them, are just crazy. They try to jump out of the tank. They bang the glass. That's why back here you'll see that I have some of the water lowered, so when they jump, they don't bang the tanks and hurt themselves too much. These, in my opinion, now that I've kept them for over a year, are fish that I would suggest shouldn't be sold in stores. I love them. They're beautiful, but they're a handful, and I wouldn't want someone inexperienced to try to keep them.
People are coming. They're actually using this trail for what it's for. They're exercising. I gotta hide the camera. I don't want to look like a weirdo. Okay, they're gone now. So you may recall that a while back, Lisa and I did an episode of 10 Things where we listed 10 fish that we don't think should be in the hobby anymore. I think a lot of people took the point of that video the wrong way. Maybe we'll expand on that a little bit more as we go on in this video. But it was similar things, what we were saying in there, to what Scott was saying in his live stream. I'll put a card, I still haven't figured it out. I'll put cards up in the corners and also links in the description to both Scott's video and our 10 Things episode. Check those out, and then let's have a talk about it. So here's the thing, in that video he said he definitely wouldn't keep 3 arowanas in a tank all together. And you might have heard that and said, oh, he's taking a stab at John. Well, trust me, he's not. Scott and I are friends. He was actually there with me when I bought those fish. So he was not taking a stab at me. And the interesting thing is, I actually agree with everything he said. I've said it before and I'll say it again, that I would rather see a lot of these fish that we're about to talk about removed from the hobby completely, not even available to people in stores, than to see them continue to get abused and mistreated. Because unfortunately, the reality of fish keeping is the majority of people that keep these fish that we would call monster fish aren't really doing it the right way. There's an argument that could be made that I'm not even doing it right. I'm doing my best though, and I'm doing a lot better than what a lot of people do. The thing is, I've talked about it a bunch of times. A lot of channels talk about it. It is something that is definitely out there in this hobby and in this community, how big these fish get. We all talk about how big these monster fish get, but something that gets overlooked, I believe, and isn't talked about nearly enough, is how powerful these fish are. Not only do they get huge, but these are some strong, heavy hitters, and there's a reason why they call them tank busters. The interesting thing about doing this out here in the wild is that I have absolutely no script. I'm just sitting here having a conversation with you. And, you know, a lot of times I might mess up, or I my snot might come out of my nose or something. And I'm just wondering, like, I'm out here. I'm in a public place. I wonder if anybody's watching me. They must think I'm some kind of freak. Yeah, and don't think between every single bit that I do, I'm not looking down the trail to make sure nobody's coming. God, I'm such a weirdo. So one of the things that I want to talk about here is the actual label monster fish, because I think there's a lot of fish out there that are labeled as monster fish, and people call them monster fish, and they're really not, even though there really isn't any rules as far as what's a monster fish and what's not. In my opinion, a monster fish is a fish that is more than just a fish that gets big. Oscars, Midas, green terrors, Jack Dempsey's, these are fish that get big, but they're not monsters. They get, 12, 14 inches or whatever, and that's a big fish, bigger than what most people can handle, but it's not necessarily a monster fish. A monster fish is one that you would know it's a monster as soon as you see it. They're monsters. But the thing is, when people talk about monster fish, I think that they're talking exclusively about size. And to me, what's even more important than a fish that gets big is the power of these fish. These fish can wreak havoc on an aquarium. And if you're not careful, if you're not housing them properly, they can wreak havoc on your home too. I know it sounds extreme, but think about it. They label these fish as tank busters. God, the sun coming between the trees. Tank busters, why do they call them that? It's not because they're so big they burst out of the tank. It's because they're so big and they're so powerful that they can break the average home aquarium. That's right. I said they can break the aquarium. Now, it is pretty extreme for one of these fish to bust through the glass. I'm not saying it can't happen, but they can bust through the lids. They can even break that little plastic piece. If you've got like an Aquarium or a top fin tank, that plastic piece that goes from front to back, they can bust that through too. They can bust the tanks. Walk on the railroad tracks and film yourself at the same time. It's not as easy as it looks. When I talk about how powerful a fish is, I'm not only talking about the fact that they're tank busters. They can break your lids. They can bust that plastic piece. I'm also talking about how powerful they can be with other fish in the tank. I know, you're not gonna keep little fish with your monster fish. You're not that dumb, right? But these are heavyweights. These can do some serious damage to other fish in the tank. That's why you see a lot of monster fish alone in a tank. So Lisa and I have been accused of being fear mongers before. Like, we try to scare people away from particular types of fish or whatever. That's absolutely not what I'm trying to do here, folks. What I'm trying to do with this particular video is talk about how powerful these fish are, because it's a fact. It's not my opinion. I'm not fear mongering. If I was fear mongering right now, I'd be talking about how the FTC is going to shut down everybody's channels on the 1st of January. But I'm not going to do that, because first of all, it's not going to happen. And second of all, I'm not a hack. Yeah, people getting dirty views for their fear tactics, talking about FTC, fish in a barrel, whatever. Looks like a comfortable seat to me. How many of you are sitting on a piece of Civil War history making a video right now? I bet not many. I need to come out here more often. It's so peaceful out here and there's nobody out here. It's so quiet, and if you have to pee, you just walk to the side of the trail and go. It's kind of freeing. This is why I don't leave the house all that often. So listen, folks, monster fish are something that I am extraordinarily passionate about. You may know me as an African cichlid person if you've just found my channel, because that's kind of how we got started on YouTube. But monster fish are what got me started in this hobby back in 1993. Arowanas are what made me fall in love with fish keeping, and they've been my favorite fish ever since. Believe me when I tell you, I'm not trying to be a fearmonger. What I want to do is to make you understand that these are more than fish that get big. Yes, they get big, but what's more important is how powerful they are. Because these fish, they can, like I said, they can break your tank. They can wreak havoc on other fish in the tank. They can do all kinds of damage to this hobby for you and your home. That might be a little bit of fear mongering, but anyway, you know, if your fish jumps out of the tank in the middle of your living room and breaks the lids and water starts going everywhere and the fish dies and all of that, it could do some serious damage to your house depending on how big the fish is. So And I guess depending on how big the tank is. So anyway, it's not really fear mongering. It's actually something that really could happen. And I don't want to see that happen to anyone. I don't want it to happen to me either. But the fact is, so many of these fish are not kept properly. They're not kept in an aquarium that can house the fish's size and also house the fish's power, because they don't need a lot of room to build up momentum and shoot themselves out of a tank. I used to go to a fish store that will remain nameless. I'm not going to talk about it, but there was a guy in there that was a very well-respected fish keeper, and he gave a lot of people advice, gave me advice all the time. But I stopped taking advice from this individual when he told me one day that it's better to put arowanas in a small tank, maximum 4 foot long. And his rationale for that was it doesn't give them the space to build momentum so that they can catapult themselves out of the tank. And I immediately said, okay. And I walked away, and I haven't seen that guy since. He was a good guy too. I like that guy, but that's the worst advice anybody could ever give, because if you've kept arowanas for more than 5 minutes, you know they don't build their momentum by gradually building up speed. These are fish that can strike like a snake. They can coil themselves up and vault themselves out of the water like it's nothing. They do this in the wild to get insects off of tree branches or even pick off birds that are flying by. I've never seen that, but I've heard that they can do that. I have seen them jump out of the water and pick off spiders and stuff like that off of the tree branches. I haven't seen that in real life, but I've seen videos of it on YouTube. I'll search for it, see if I can find it, and I'll put it down in the description below. They don't need space to build momentum. They're skimmers. They're up at the top of the tank. They're always going around at the top of the tank. And when they see something, they coil up and they vault. That's just how they do it. They don't go to the far corner of the tank and start going and build up speed and jump out. No, that's not how it happens. And this is not just about arowanas. This is about all monster fish. They need very little space to build momentum and jump out. So I don't even know why I'm talking about this, because that is literally the only person I've ever heard talk about that. And it was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So I'm sure you weren't thinking that a smaller tank is better because they can't build momentum. I'm sure you weren't thinking that. So I probably won't even include this in the video. I'm pretty sure I just got bit by something on my butt. Okay, I didn't. I did get up and walk away though, because yeah, anyway, I didn't get bit. Don't worry, everything's fine. So anyway, listen folks, whether it's arowanas or red-tailed cats or tiger shovel-nosed cats or iridescent sharks or pacu, giant gouramis, there's tons of fish that would fall into the monster fish category, or really any fish that get big, but particularly monsters. These are little powerhouses. They're heavyweights. You need to think about not only can they be housed in a tank that's going to support their size, but you have to also think of how powerful these fish are and the damage that they can do because of that power. And I just thought of a really good story. I got to find another railroad tie to sit on. Let me find one. Why sit on a railroad tie when I can just sit on the railroad tracks? That's very cool, and I don't have to worry about any trains coming. I guess that would be like some kind of paranormal video if it did. But anyway, back in like 2011, Lisa and I had 2 arowanas in a 6-foot tank in our living room. We bought an 8-foot tank to move those fish into. They were about 20, maybe 22 inches when we moved them from that tank into the 8-footer. The tanks weren't that far apart from each other, but we did have to get them from one to the other. So our plan was Lisa was going to net them in a big net. She was going to hand them off to me, and I was holding a towel, and I would wrap them up in the towel. The towel was wet, and I would run them over to the other tank and put them in there. This would be a safe transport for the fish. We actually saw them do that on the show Tanked, so that's where we got the idea to do that. So Lisa nets the bigger of the two, 22 or so inches, hands him over to me. I grab him, and before I can put the blanket over him, he jumps out of my hands. This is a 22-inch arowana, and I swear to God, this fish landed about 8 feet over there. not over there, but in the room, you understand what I'm saying, bounced off the ground and started doing what fish do, flopping all over the place. This fish was jumping about 2 feet up into the air because he was so strong and so powerful. So jumps 8 feet out of my hands, and then he's jumping 2 feet off the ground as he's flopping around. I picked him up real quick. I had to basically tackle him. I put him in the towel, ran him over, put him into the big 8-foot tank, and he was fine. Lost a couple of scales, little fin stuff, but he was fine, and he was good to go for quite some time until he jumped out of the tank and broke the lid off of my tank on Father's Day, which was 2013, I think, or I don't know, maybe 2012. I don't remember what it was. It was a dark day for me, but those are 2 stories about that same fish. Jumped 8 feet out of my hands, and then a year later or so, jumped out of the tank, broke the 1/4-inch thick glass lid, and ended up on the floor. And that was how I celebrated Father's Day. So listen, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse or a dead fish. These fish are extraordinarily powerful. They are stronger than you think. They can do more damage than you think. You need to be aware of that before you put them into a tank that's too small. Don't fall into this trap. I've talked about it in several videos, and it's not the last time you're gonna hear me say it. Don't put them into a tank and say, well, I'm gonna put them in here for about 6 months, and then I'm gonna upgrade them into the bigger tank. Don't do that. Just wait. Wait till you have a big enough tank, one that can house the fish and also house the power of that fish. I think I've said that 62 times now. I'm walking on a trail in the woods. I just want to find a bird that I can take a little shot of for my friend Rack at the River Life. He's a bird watcher guy. They keep flying away. Well, this was awfully nice of somebody to leave this grill out here for people to use. It's a nice grill too. It even has utensils. So I don't know how this is going to turn out, or if I'm even going to upload it. I don't know. I might not, but thought it'd be fun. Come out here, take a walk with you, and just talk. No script, no real plan. Just, hey, fish are powerful. That's what I want to talk about. Monster fish are more than just fish that get big. And unfortunately, one of the things I end up doing when I have no script is I repeat the same thing over and over and over again. So to avoid doing that, I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here. If you have any nightmare stories about monster fish, put them down in the description. Don't put them in the description because you don't have access to the description. See, no script. Put them down in the comment section below. Let me know the things that have happened to you. And you know what? There could be a million nightmare stories out there about monster fish. I'm still going to keep them. And I think you should too, but you should do it the right way. So anyway, I've had a lot of fun with this. Nice little walk out on a cool December day. It's been fun. If you like this kind of thing, let me know. And maybe I'll do this more often, but it's going to be getting real cold here soon. So what am I going to do? Take a walk in the snow? No. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to catch my breath, and I'll see you next time.